In this episode, we move into one of the most important trust systems in modern information security, because many secure digital activities depend on people and systems believing that a connection, a certificate, or a digital identity is genuine. Public Key Infrastructure, PKI, is the framework that helps make that trust possible. For a beginner studying for the Certified Information Systems Auditor, CISA, exam, this topic can seem more complicated than it really is because the words sound technical and the moving parts seem abstract at first. The good news is that the basic purpose is very practical. Organizations need a reliable way to prove identity, protect communications, support encryption, and confirm that digital actions came from a trusted source. Once you stop thinking of PKI as a mysterious backroom technology and start thinking of it as the trust engine behind secure websites, digital certificates, signatures, and protected communications, the whole subject becomes much easier to follow and much more relevant to the work of auditing. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A helpful starting point is to understand the problem PKI is trying to solve. In the physical world, trust often comes from face-to-face recognition, official identification, controlled buildings, and documented processes. In the digital world, systems are constantly connecting across networks, often without any human present to personally verify identity. A user may connect to a website, a device may connect to a server, an employee may sign a document electronically, or one application may exchange data with another. In all of those cases, there has to be some way to determine whether the other party is really who or what it claims to be. Without a trust system, attackers could impersonate legitimate services, intercept communications, or create false credentials that appear convincing. PKI exists to reduce that uncertainty by creating a structured method for issuing, validating, and managing digital certificates and related keys. Its real value is that it turns digital trust from a guess into a controlled process supported by policy, technology, and governance. At the center of PKI is the idea of key pairs, which means two related cryptographic keys are used together rather than relying on one shared secret alone. One key is public and can be shared with others, while the other is private and must be protected carefully. These keys are mathematically related, and that relationship makes several important security functions possible. A public key can be used to support encryption in a way that only the corresponding private key can reverse, or a private key can be used to create a digital signature that others can verify with the public key. For a beginner, the easiest way to think about this is that one key is meant to be known while the other must remain secret, and the power of the system depends on managing that relationship correctly. This approach helps solve a major trust problem in open environments because it allows secure interactions without requiring both parties to already share the same secret key in advance, which would be difficult to manage at scale. Even though the key pair concept is central, PKI is bigger than keys alone. The framework also needs a way to connect a public key to a real identity in a trustworthy and verifiable manner. That is where digital certificates come in. A certificate is essentially a signed digital record that ties a public key to a subject, such as a person, system, device, or service. The certificate contains identifying information and is issued by a trusted authority so that others can rely on it. Without that trusted link, anyone could generate a key pair and simply claim to be a bank, a payroll system, or an executive. The certificate gives the identity claim more credibility because it shows that a recognized authority has validated and signed the binding between the subject and the public key. From the audit perspective, this is a major point because the strength of PKI depends not only on mathematical processes, but also on the integrity of how identities are verified, how certificates are issued, and how trust is maintained over time. One of the most important components in this framework is the certification authority, CA, which is the trusted entity that issues and signs certificates. The CA plays a central role because its signature tells others that a certificate can be trusted within the scope of that environment. If the CA is well governed and its private signing key is strongly protected, the trust system has a solid foundation. If the CEA is weak, poorly secured, or improperly managed, then the entire structure becomes questionable because other systems are depending on that authority's credibility. In many environments, the CEA is supported by additional roles and processes that help manage requests, approval, issuance, renewal, and revocation. For beginners, it helps to picture the CEA as the digital equivalent of an official office that validates identity and issues highly trusted credentials. For auditors, the key concern is whether that office, whether internal or external, is operated in a manner that justifies the trust placed in it by the organization and its users. Another component that often appears in PKI environments is the Registration Authority, RA, which helps with identity verification before a certificate is issued. The RA does not necessarily sign certificates itself. Instead, it may review requests, confirm that the subject is legitimate, and then pass trusted information to the CA for issuance. This separation of duties can improve control because it divides the identity verification task from the certificate signing task. That matters because trust can fail in more than one place. A certificate may be cryptographically valid but still assigned to the wrong person or system if the underlying verification was careless or fraudulent. The presence of an RA helps organizations create more structure around the issuance process, especially in larger environments where many certificate requests are being handled. From a CISA perspective, this reminds you that PKI is not just a technical mechanism. It is also a process framework where roles, approvals, documentation, and separation of responsibility all contribute to the overall strength of the control environment. Certificates are only useful if systems know whether they should trust the authority that issued them. And that brings us to the idea of trust chains. A trust chain is the path by which one certificate is validated through one or more issuing authorities back to a root of trust. The root is usually a highly protected certificate authority whose certificate is already trusted by the relevant systems or applications. Below that root, there may be intermediate authorities that issue certificates on its behalf. This layered design allows more flexibility and can reduce operational risk because the most sensitive root key can be kept especially protected and used less often. For a beginner, the main point is that trust does not come from a certificate appearing out of nowhere. It comes from a chain of signed relationships that leads back to an authority the system already trusts. From an audit standpoint, this structure raises important questions about key protection, hierarchy design, certificate path validation, and whether the organization manages its trusted authorities in a way that supports both security and operational control. One of the most visible uses of PKI in everyday life is secure web communication. When a user visits a secure website, a certificate is presented so the user's system can verify the identity of the site and help establish protected communication. This process supports transport layer security, TLS, which helps provide confidentiality and integrity for the session. Although most users experience this as a simple lock symbol or a trusted connection, there is a great deal happening behind the scenes. The certificate must be valid, the issuing authority must be trusted, the certificate name must match the site, and the certificate must not be expired or revoked. If any of those conditions fail, the trust relationship may be broken or questionable. This example matters because it shows how PKI quietly supports normal digital activity without most people needing to understand the mechanics in detail. For auditors, however, those mechanics matter because a trusted-looking connection can be unsafe if certificate management practices are weak or if users have been trained to ignore warning signs. PKI is also important for digital signatures, which help prove that a message, document, or piece of software came from a particular source and has not been altered in an unauthorized way. This is a different use case from encrypting communication, even though both rely on related trust concepts. A digital signature allows others to verify the origin and integrity of the signed item using the signer's public key and certificate. In practical terms, this can support business transactions, software distribution, email security, legal documents, and administrative approvals. The value is not just convenience. It is accountability and confidence. If a document is signed digitally through a well-managed PKI environment, the organization has stronger evidence about who approved it and whether it remained unchanged afterward. From the CISA perspective, digital signatures are important because they show how PKI contributes to non-repudiation, which is the idea that a person or system cannot easily deny a digital action that can be reliably tied to them. That makes PKI relevant to governance, control evidence, and business process assurance, not just technical communication. Of course, trust over time requires more than issuing certificates once and forgetting them. Certificates have a life cycle, and good PKI management includes request, approval, issuance, distribution, storage, renewal, replacement, suspension in some environments, and eventual expiration or revocation. Revocation is especially important because circumstances change. A private key may be compromised, a user may leave the organization, a system may be decommissioned, or a certificate may have been issued incorrectly. If a certificate can no longer be trusted, others need a way to know that before relying on it. Two common ways to support that are the Certificate Revocation List, CRL, and the Online Certificate Status Protocol, OCSP. These mechanisms help systems check whether a certificate is still valid. For beginners, the main lesson is that trust is not permanent just because a certificate was once issued correctly. For auditors, certificate lifecycle management is a core control area because outdated, forgotten, or invalid certificates can quietly create serious weaknesses if the organization lacks strong processes for review and timely action. Key protection is one of the most critical themes in this subject because the trust created by PKI depends heavily on private keys remaining private. If a private key is exposed, stolen, or misused, an attacker may be able to impersonate a trusted service, decrypt protected information in some contexts, or create signatures that appear legitimate. That is why organizations place strong emphasis on how keys are generated, stored, accessed, backed up, and retired. Some environments use specialized protections such as a hardware security module, HSM, to safeguard especially sensitive keys, though the exact design can vary based on risk and scale. The broader point is that key management is not a side issue. It is the heart of the system's practical trustworthiness. A beautifully structured certificate hierarchy means very little if the underlying private keys are poorly protected or widely accessible. From an audit point of view, questions about key ownership, custody, separation of duties, recovery, and access logging are often more important than surface-level discussions about whether PKI has been deployed. PKI also connects to identity and access decisions in ways that go beyond websites and document signing. It can support device authentication, secure connections between systems, protected administrative access, and stronger user verification in environments where trust must be established carefully. It may also work alongside multi-factor authentication, MFA, in some contexts, strengthening confidence that a user or device is genuine before access is granted. This matters because modern organizations do not just need to know whether a password was entered correctly. They need to know whether the connecting system is trusted, whether the certificate is valid, and whether the identity claim is supported by stronger proof than a reusable secret alone. For learners, this helps place PKI in the bigger security picture. It is not a standalone island of cryptographic activity. It is part of how organizations create trusted relationships across people, systems, devices, applications, and business processes. That broader role is why auditors encounter PKI in many different areas rather than only in narrowly technical reviews. Beginners often struggle with a few common misconceptions about this topic, so it helps to clear them away directly. One misconception is that PKI is only for very large organizations with complex technical teams, when in reality many organizations rely on certificate-based trust in everyday systems, whether they actively think about it or not. Another misconception is that once certificates are issued, the job is finished. In truth, maintenance, monitoring, renewal, revocation, and policy enforcement are all part of what keeps the system trustworthy. A third misconception is that the math alone guarantees safety. Strong cryptographic methods matter, but weak identity verification, poor governance, sloppy key handling, or unreviewed certificate sprawl can undermine the whole environment. This is why PKI is such a good CISA topic. It combines technology, governance, risk management, and operational discipline in a way that shows how trust is built, and how easily it can be weakened if the organization treats it as a one-time technical setup instead of a continuing control responsibility. From the audit perspective, reviewing PKI means asking whether the organization's trust framework is designed appropriately, managed carefully, and aligned with business risk. An auditor may examine certificate policies, issuance procedures, role separation, approval workflows, key protection methods, revocation practices, logging, monitoring, and recovery arrangements. The auditor may also look for evidence that expired certificates are replaced on time, and used certificates are retired, access to sensitive key material is restricted, and trusted authorities are managed under clear governance. Documentation matters greatly here because PKI touches systems that many other controls depend on, so weak oversight can have a wide impact. The review is not just about whether certificates exist. It is about whether the whole system that supports those certificates can justify the trust placed in them by users, administrators, applications, and business leaders. That is the real audit mindset you want to develop. Not simply asking whether a security technology is present, but asking whether it is controlled well enough to deserve reliance. PKI should feel much less like an intimidating technical phrase and much more like a practical framework for building digital trust. It helps organizations prove identity, protect communication, support digital signatures, and manage certificates in a structured way so that systems and users can rely on one another with greater confidence. The most important ideas to carry forward are that trust depends on verified identity. Certificates link public keys to that identity. Authorities and trust chains support validation, and lifecycle management keeps the framework dependable over time. For the CISA learner, the lasting lesson is that PKI is not valuable because it sounds advanced. It is valuable because modern organizations need a disciplined way to decide what and whom they can trust in digital environments where impersonation, interception, and misuse are real risks. When that trust framework is designed and governed well, it becomes one of the strongest foundations supporting secure operations across the enterprise.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.